The phone lit up on Katherine Hayes's marble desk, an unknown number blinking like a siren. She almost let it go to voicemail. Billionaires do not answer strange calls. Then a rough voice cut through the office hush. "Mrs. Hayes, your daughter collapsed." "She is breathing." I kept her warm. Her hand tightened around the phone. "Who is this? Where is she?" Silence. A dog barked faintly on the line. The voice came back steady and urgent. "No time for names. Come now. East side under the old streetlight." "I will not leave her." Katherine's world, built on glass and steel, tilted. She had crushed rivals, charmed investors, and outlasted storms. But this was different. 16 years of motherhood pressed on her chest like a weight. Lily, bright, stubborn, hers. The Bentley swung to the curb. City lights streaked past. Katherine pictured greasy hands, a shadowed alley, and a threat she could not buy off. Yet something in that voice lingered. Not a menace, duty, a stranger who stayed. At the end of the block, a flickering bulb painted the cracked pavement. A girl slumped against brick. A ragged man knelt beside her, a thin dog at his heel, a torn coat wrapped around Lily's shoulders. Before that call before the ambulance, there was Jack. He woke most mornings before the sun cut through the lake wind. The alley behind the community center funneled the cold like a tunnel. On a January dawn, it could feel like 20 degrees Fahrenheit even without the gusts. He would sit up slowly, rub his hands, and talk to the dog that understood him better than most people ever had. Morning Rusty. The terrier mix thumped his thin but bright-eyed tail. Jack broke a day-old roll in half. The soft center went to Rusty first. Always to Rusty first. He had once worked with tape measures and steel studs, not soup lines and barrel fires. Construction, long weeks, overtime. He liked the rhythm of plumb and level, the way a straight wall answered a straight eye. Then a fall, a layoff, a busted shoulder that never healed right, and the kind of bills that multiply while you sleep. 1 month he drove a pickup. 3 months later, he slept under an awning when the rain came sideways off the river. He kept 3 things in his coat no matter the season. A bent carpenter's square with the words, "Measure twice" scratched into the metal. A library card cracked at the edge that still let him sit in the warmth, and read repair manuals he no longer used for a paycheck. And a folded card with a name he did not belong near Katherine Hayes. He had tucked it away after that night at the hospital as if the ink might turn to smoke if he looked at it too long. Jack's days were simple because simple did not break your heart. He walked 10 blocks to a church kitchen that opened at 6 a.m. If the line was short, he took coffee and oatmeal. If it was long, he stepped back and let a family move ahead. He checked 2-day labor lots by 7:30. Some mornings he got lucky and carried drywall for 4 hours. Some mornings, luck did not even slow down. He watched for the men who offered quick cash for ugly work and learned to shake his head. Rusty's ribs had once shown. Not anymore. That was one promise Jack kept. He kept time by the city, by the bus that hissed at the corner on the half hour, by the bakery that tossed unsold loaves at 8 p.m., by the security guard who swept the library at closing and said, "5 minutes, folks," with a voice that tried to be gentle. Jack warmed his hands there and read about framing, about roofs and stairs, and about how to set string lines so a whole building would not drift an inch over 50 feet. He read slowly out loud sometimes to keep the words honest in his mouth. Rusty snored at his feet, content with the heat and the smell of paper. He thought often about the small things that still belonged to him. Dignity. The choice to share a meal. The habit of saying sir and ma'am even when it earned him nothing. A memory of a foreman who once said, "You take care of your crew, Jack. A good man is the last line." He had repeated that sentence on nights when the wind cut through 3 layers and the barrel fire dipped low. Last line. It sounded like a job. It sounded like worth. He did not plan to be on the east side that evening. He had been walking a mile to a lighted doorway, where a volunteer would sometimes hand out socks and thick gloves. Rusty pulled toward the scent of meat from a food truck that parked under a flickering bulb. That is when Jack saw a girl slide down a wall as if the strength had gone out of her bones. She hit the pavement hard. No one stopped. He moved without thinking, coat off, shoulders around her, 2 fingers under her jaw to feel the pulse, shallow fast, breathing but thin. He tilted her gently and tried to keep the airway clear. "Hey, kid," he said, quiet and steady. "Stay with me." Rusty curled tight against her legs, a small warm weight. Jack did not call 911 first. He called the number he found on the phone that had fallen from her pocket. Mom. He braced for anger. He heard fear instead. The sound put heat in his chest that had nothing to do with the barrel fire behind him. He stayed because someone had to be the last line. He stayed because a girl was somebody's whole world. Katherine Hayes ran a world of glass steel and signatures. Her headquarters rose over the Chicago River like a statement. 40 floors of brushed metal soundproof boardrooms and carpets that swallowed footsteps. In the executive conference room, a 20-foot glass table gleamed. Lake Michigan lay beyond the windows, slate blue and cold, as if distance itself had a temperature. She wore precision like armor. A navy suit cut to the quarter-inch. 3-inch heels that never faltered. A watch that could buy a compact car. She arrived at 6:45 a.m., when the air still smelled faintly of lemon polish and the building's heat cycled up. Her assistant Mara walked 2 steps behind with a leather folio. Legal briefings, market notes, a list of donors who expected a call back before noon. The board loved numbers, and Katherine spoke their language. Revenue by quarter, margins by segment, risk profiled in neat columns. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. When she asked a question, men with gray hair and gold pens leaned forward. That was power in this room. Not shouting. Gravity. There was another language here, too. Image. The company had a wing for reputation management, a camera-ready lobby with stone counters and a wall of awards. A public relations chief who could turn a misstep into an initiative by Monday morning. The city loved the firm's galas, the symphony, the museum, the dinners where centerpieces were taller than a child and the beef tenderloin arrived at a perfect medium. Katherine had grown used to the soft cruelty of such rooms. She could hear judgment in a raised eyebrow. She could read a market shift in the silence before a toast. She knew how to move in spaces where $1 million was a line item and compassion, if it appeared at all, lived on a banner over the dessert table. Victor Ames chaired the board's finance committee. He wore cufflinks that flashed like coins and smiled only with his teeth. Optics, he said often, as if he had trademarked the word. The market is nervous, he would add, tapping a printout with one clean finger. We cannot indulge distractions. By distractions, he meant anything that did not lift the stock by a point. A strike on the South Side, a charity that fed people without a photo backdrop, or now rumors that the CEO of Hayes Meridian had been seen stepping out of a black SUV in an alley handing a thermos to a man with a torn coat and a dog at his feet. Social feeds move faster than truth, Mara warned, gently placing a tablet in front of Katherine. A blog had posted 2 blurry photos just before dawn. The caption guessed more than it knew. The comments did the rest. The words trended for an hour: billionaire drifter and scandal. The PR chief drafted statements that said nothing and offered them with pride. Katherine studied the screen without blinking. She could play this game in her sleep. Defer, deny, distract. Donors would nod. The board would breathe easier. The story would sink beneath the next frenzy within 48 hours. That was the promise of a city that never looked down long enough to see what it stepped over. Yet the room's luxury felt loud today. The custom walnut paneling, The coffee machine from Switzerland that hissed like a tame engine. The framed photograph of a ribbon cutting where she held giant scissors and everyone smiled. Her reflection in the window looked flawless, unassailable, far away. That night, she was scheduled to host a dinner at a restaurant where the napkins were folded like sailing ships and the waiters moved in silence. Name cards in gold ink. A donor who wanted his foundation on the wall in letters at least 3 inches high. The conversation would float above real trouble like a chandelier bright and carefully hung. Katherine had been queen of those rooms for years. She knew which compliments to offer, which hands to shake, which jokes to laugh at, and which to ignore. What she could not ignore was the texture of a torn wool sleeve against a teenage girl's cheek. The low bark that had trembled through a phone line, the way a stranger had said I will not leave her and kept his word under a failing streetlight. Victor waited by the window, now hands in his pockets. We are aligned, yes. His voice was smooth. Distance yourself. Issue a line about personal safety. Pivot to the literacy program on Monday. Compassion is fine at scale, Katherine, not in alleys. Compassion at scale. The phrase landed with the weight of a ledger. Katherine's jaw eased, then set. She knew the cost of defiance. Markets punish what they do not understand. Donors pull checks when dinner chatter grows sharp. But she also knew the cost of amnesia. She had seen it in the mirror once after a victory that tasted like dust. Her penthouse waited on Lakeshore Drive. Heated floors, white walls, a view that wrapped the city like a screensaver. It offered comfort without rest. The air was perfect there. The silence was expensive. Tonight, even that would feel crowded with whispers from people who never lifted anything heavier than a glass. The opposing force was not one man. It was a system. It was polished as a creed. It was the cool math of a room where nothing messy could be admitted. It stood across from a man who had stayed when everyone else walked away. Tomorrow, a choice would be made in daylight. 2 worlds would step into the same room, and the carpet would not muffle what mattered. The restaurant glittered like a jewel box. Cut crystal caught the light. Brass warmed the room. Linen napkins were folded like clipped white sails. The city filmed itself in the windows. 40 stories below traffic hummed. Inside, a string quartet stitched a calm no one quite felt. Katherine arrived to a ripple of attention. Donors stood. Hands reached. Victor Ames appeared at her shoulder like a shadow that smiled. Optics, he murmured as if offering a mint. We keep the room clean. She answered with a nod so slight it could be mistaken for a breath. She moved from table to table, remembered a grandson's name, praised a hospital wing. The choreography of power was muscle memory now, but her mind returned again and again to a flicker of streetlight and a torn coat pulled around a girl's shoulders. In the service corridor, Mara caught up. He's downstairs, she said softly. You asked me to have a coat ready. Wool. Dark. His size, I think. Katherine hesitated, then decided. Bring him up the back hallway. 10 minutes. I want him to see this room the way it looks when people claim to care. Mara's eyes searched Katherine's face. She gave a crisp nod and slipped away. At the head table, the MC tapped a glass. Tonight we celebrate our city's beating heart, he announced. Private dollars for public good. The words rang like cutlery. A waiter poured a Bordeaux, the color of lacquer. Victor leaned close. After dessert, you will mention the literacy program, and nothing else. A server opened a side door. Jack stepped into the corridor's bright hush, freshly scrubbed, shaved roughly as if with a dull razor and a careful hand. The loaned wool coat fit his shoulders. Rusty bathed and restless waited with a volunteer at the service elevator tail thumping like a metronome. Mara gestured. Here she whispered. Just a moment at the edge of the room. Then we go. Jack's eyes adjusted. He took in the chandeliers, the way people laughed with their heads thrown back, the plates that could have paid a week's rent if a person still had rent to pay. He stood straight without trying to look like he belonged. Katherine saw him and rose. Victor's hand flicked to stop her. Not here. Here, she said, and kept walking. They met at the corner of the room where the carpet swallowed sound. For a heartbeat, they were two people at a door no one else could see. "Thank you for coming," Katherine said. The words were simple. They cost her more than most speeches. "Didn't want you to carry that thermos back," he answered. Seemed wrong. A woman in a sequined jacket turned. Her smile faltered, then froze. Conversations dipped, then quieted, then pretended to resume. The room arranged itself into constellations of glances. Victor was there, smooth as oil. "Sir, this is a private event." Katherine's voice stayed level. "He's my guest." "That is not how our donors will describe him," Victor replied, and the word "our" did all the heavy lifting. At table 4, a donor laughed too loudly. At table 6, another checked her phone and raised her eyebrows. It did not take long. It never does. A small, tight voice cut through the quartet's soft run. "My bracelet," the woman in sequins said. She touched her wrist. It was here a moment ago. The room's attention swung as if pulled by wire. The maitre d' hurried forward, concern polished to a shine. "We will find it, ma'am." Victor did not look at Katherine. "Security," he said, and two men in suits appeared from the hallway, as if folded into the wall until needed. Jack lifted his hands, palms open. "I didn't touch your table. We're not accusing you," one guard said. He sounded like a man trained to make accusations sound like apologies. "We just need to clear this up." Katherine stepped between them. "No." Victor's smile returned thin as a blade. "For everyone's comfort," comfort, Jack repeated. The word sat oddly in his mouth like a coin he did not use. "Empty your pockets," the guard said. Jack looked at Katherine. He saw the cost of this moment in the stillness of her face. He reached into the coat. He set a folded library card on the linen, a carpenter's square worn at the edge, a crumpled receipt for dog food, a paper packet of sugar unopened. The room watched as if a magician might bring a dove from a sleeve. He reached into the inner pocket and paused. "This isn't hers," he said before anyone could speak. "But I should have given it up a long time ago." A small silver locket slid into his palm. Oval. Scuffed. The hinge is held by a tiny replacement pin. On the front, an engraving barely visible under years of handling, two letters nested. M and H. The room did not breathe. Sounds from the kitchen stopped at the door as if the air had thickened. Katherine's hand lifted without her permission. She knew the locket by weight not sight. Her mother's. Lost the night the old Hayes plant burned 17 years ago. The clasp had been loose even then. She had searched a week with a flashlight, and a lie telling herself a keepsake did not matter, so she would not dream of it. "Where did you get that?" she asked, and the quiet hit like a bell. Victor found his voice first. "Ma'am, the bracelet. Where did you get that?" She repeated, eyes on Jack, the past rising like floodwater up a stair. Jack closed his fingers around the locket. "From a place that never should have fallen," he said. "From a floor I was tearing down. I thought I'd find the owner someday." No one moved. The donor's hand fell from her wrist. Even the quartet's bow hung in the air. No one moved. The silver locket sat in Jack's palm like a small clock that had stopped and started again. Katherine's voice was steady, but only because she forced it to be. "Open it." Jack pressed the hinge with his thumb. The lid stuck, then gave. Inside, a smoke-darkened photo. A young woman with clear eyes and a blunt haircut held a toddler in a knit hat. The woman's smile was crooked, as if the moment had caught her mid-laugh. The toddler reached for the camera with both hands. On the opposite side, a thin paper oval was pinned under the rim. A few inked words splotched by water and heat. For Kay, keep this close. M. Katherine's breath faltered. M. Margaret, her mother's name. The room receded. The clink of cutlery, the hush of the quartet, the steady churn of the city below. All of it fell away until there was only the old factory's red brick, the pitch of the roof line, and the night the fire ate what it could not own. She reached out. Jack did not pull back. The locket lay on her open palm. It was warm from his hand. He had kept it close. "How do you have this?" she said, and the question came out as two questions at once. How long and why me? Jack looked past her shoulder as if trying to find words in the bright chandeliers. 17 years ago, he said quietly. I was on a demo crew. We were tearing down what the fire didn't finish. They told us to move fast. No salvage, no delays. Just drop it and haul it. His jaw tightened. I found a line of lockers in a back room. The metal had buckled from heat. Inside, one wrapped in a bandana, was this. Someone had tucked it away like they meant to come back. I didn't know whose it was. I only knew it mattered. Victor's voice slid in calm as a closing door. And you thought you would keep it. Curious habit for a demolition laborer. Jack didn't look at him. I thought I would find the owner when I could prove what else I saw. What else? Katherine asked. The floor felt unsteady. The carpet was thick, but it might as well have been ice. Jack's eyes met hers. There was no posture in them, only weariness and care. The alarms did not work. Someone had pulled the batteries. The exits at the east stairwell were chained from the outside. We cut those chains with a saw after the fire crews got there. Too late for two men trapped by a fallen beam. I wrote it down. I went to a site foreman. He told me to shut up and swing the hammer. He took a breath. So I called the number on a notice board, a safety hotline. The next week I was off the schedule. The week after that, the landlord changed the lock. By spring, I was in the yard trying to get 4 hours on a drywall truck. A glass clicked against glass in the far corner. The sound cracked the air and died. Katherine turned the locket in her palm. The back was scorched. The hinge had been repaired with a small brass pin too bright for the rest of the metal. Her mother had fixed things with her hands when Katherine was a girl. Lamps, toasters, hinges. If it sticks, she used to say, start with the simplest part. Why didn't you come to me? Katherine asked. Her voice was low. Why carry this for years? Jack answered without defense. Because I didn't think you would listen. Because the last man who listened lost his job. Because I didn't know if the truth would matter to people who measure everything in quarters and points. He paused. And because I was ashamed of what I used to be, of what I became. I kept the locket to remind myself that something real had been lost. Not steel, not brick, a person. Victor found his smile again. An emotional story, he said, but not evidence. You do realize, Katherine, that a man who admits to trespass and theft is asking us to accept his word over signed reports. Katherine did not look at him. Who chained the door? She asked. Jack shook his head. I don't know names, but I know habits. When money is on the line, someone always finds a way to shave time and shave cost. They tell themselves no one will notice until a night watchman cannot get out. Katherine's throat tightened. There had been a night watchman. She had sent flowers to his widow because the PR team had a list for moments like that. The card had said, with deepest sympathy, in a script she had not written. Jack straightened as if bracing for the push that always came. I called the number again a year later. Gave details. A man met me in a coffee shop near the river. He wore a suit and a smile. He told me there was no appetite for reopening old files. He gave me a card for a shelter. Said I had done my part. What man? Katherine asked. Jack's mouth tightened. He never gave his name. He had a pin on his lapel, a small H in a circle. Katherine closed her eyes for a beat. Hayes Meridian's first logo, retired and replaced when the company modernized. She had signed that brief. She had praised the clean look in the press release. When she opened her eyes, they were wet, not with weakness, with something heavier, recognition. The bracelet, she said to the woman in sequins without turning. "Is it found?" The woman flushed. "Yes. It had slipped into the hem of my clutch." "Of course it did," Victor murmured, but no one was listening anymore. Katherine looked at Jack. "You kept my mother's locket safe," she said, "when I did not even know where to look." Jack shook his head. "I kept it because I did not know what else to do. But I can give it to you now." She closed his fingers around it instead. "Not yet," she said. "Not until we open the rest of this. Not until we see where the chain starts." The quartet began to play again, tentatively, as if testing whether the room would let the music through. It did, but it was thinner than before. Katherine turned to Mara. "Find everything archived from the plant. Insurance filings, safety logs, internal memos, pull box files from storage, tonight." Victor's voice sharpened. "Katherine, this is not the venue." She faced him. "It is exactly the venue. This is where we decided to call tragedy a line item. Tonight we decide if we have the stomach for the truth." Her hand shook once, then steadied. She looked back at Jack. "There were chains on that door," she said. "Someone put them there. Someone signed off on batteries pulled from alarms. I have spent years believing we were better than that." Jack's voice was quiet. "Belief is good. Proof is better." Katherine nodded. "Then we will find proof." And for the first time that night the room felt honest. They did not go home after the gala. Boxes arrived at Hayes Meridian before midnight. Records from storage, off-site backups, old binders that still smelled like dust and machine oil. Mara cleared the long conference table. The city glowed beyond the glass like a sheet of stars, but no one looked out. Katherine slid on cotton gloves. Jack stood at the end of the table with his hands at his sides, as if he were back on a job site waiting for a foreman to call the cut. Lily sat wrapped in a fleece blanket, a nurse's OK tucked in her pocket collar back in her cheeks. Rusty slept under the window, one ear up, ready. They began with maintenance logs, paper forms with check boxes, handwriting in pencil that smudged. A week before the fire, a note in block letters, east stairwell alarms chirping, replace batteries, next line in a different pen, on hold. Inspection Monday. Initials no one recognized. The following day, a second note. Chirp stopped. Someone had written resolved and circled it. Mara opened a box marked insurance. Internal memos slid out stapled hard. One line stopped the room. Eliminate non-essential access points after hours to deter theft. Use chains temporarily where keyed bars are not yet installed. At the bottom, a stamped signature for procurement. Below it, a countersign in blue ink. V. Ames. Katherine did not speak. She handed the page to Jack. He read slowly, mouth tight, then passed it to Lily. Lily looked up at her mother. "That is the man from tonight, right?" Katherine nodded once. A third box held hotline records, printed emails, calls logged with time and date. One line, 1 year after the fire. Caller reports chained exits during the incident and alleges alarms were disabled. Response: no new action. Prior findings are sufficient. Name of the responder on the signature line. Compliance liaison. V. Ames. Silence pressed on the glass. The city kept humming. Katherine's phone vibrated. She glanced down. A message from Mara's overnight runner. A retired building engineer had answered a call. He was awake. He would come up. 10 minutes later, a man in a heavy coat stood in the doorway, hat in his hands. The years had creased his face, but not his voice. "Name is Don Donovan," he said. Worked the old plant 24 years. I warned about those chains, wrote it in my notebook. Boss told me it was temporary, said we had a new insurance walkthrough and could not afford theft on top of repair. When the fire hit, we could not find the bolt cutters for a full 3 minutes. 3 minutes in a fire is forever. He held up a small spiral pad, edges curled. The note was there. Plain, dated. He swallowed hard. They told me I could retire early with a nice letter. I took it. I have not slept right since. Lily stood. She walked to the man and took his hand. "Thank you," she said. He blinked surprised and covered her hand with both of his. The conference room door opened without a knock. Victor stepped in with a lawyer at his shoulder. His smile was polished, but his eyes looked past the boxes to the signatures. "It is late," he said. "This is not how we review legacy files. Chain of custody matters. Context matters. The internet is already full of noise." Katherine did not invite him to sit. She held up the memo. "Did you countersign this?" His chin lifted half an inch. "We followed standard loss prevention. The locks were to deter after-hours theft. If the alarms had functioned, none of this would have mattered." "The alarms did not function," Katherine said. "Your team signed off on holding the battery replacement. That decision was made by facilities," he said, "not finance." Donovan's voice carried from the end of the table. "Facilities did not make that call alone. I was there. We were told to wait until the inspection cleared. Less overtime, fewer line items." We grumbled in the break room. Then we went back to work. Victor's lawyer raised a hand. "With respect, these are old grievances. You cannot tie them to criminal intent. You have a corporation to protect. There are shareholders." Katherine's laugh was short and without humor. Shareholders did not stand behind a chained door. She reached for another file. Insurance adjuster photos. A shot of the east stairwell close cropped. A small detail gleamed in the upper left corner. Fresh scratch marks on a latch plate. A shallow groove where a chain had rubbed steel. Mara laid a receipt on the table. Bulk chain purchased from a supplier 3 days before the inspection. The cost was circled. The requisition code matched the memo number. Victor set his hands on the back of a chair. "You are tired," he said. "Do not let one dramatic night and a homeless man's story undo a decade of work. You were not on that floor. You do not know what trades were on site, what subcontractors did, or what was improvised. He is not credible." He spoke to the room, but his eyes were on Katherine. He was asking her to choose. She had chosen men like him before. It had felt safe. It had felt professional. It had also felt empty. She turned to Jack. "The man you met by the river, the one with the lapel pin. Was it him?" Jack studied Victor's face. He wore a different pin. New logo. Same eyes. Victor's smile thinned. "You are making a spectacle of a tragedy. You will burn the company to the ground over a stack of old papers and the testimony of a drifter." Lily stepped between them before Katherine could answer. Her voice was quiet and clear. "He is the reason I am alive." Victor blinked. For once he had no line prepared. Katherine set both palms on the table. "I built a brand on clean glass and straight lines," she said. "But truth is not a brand asset. It is a promise. We took shortcuts. People died. We buried it under words. I am done with that." The lawyer tried one more angle. "Katherine, a public correction will trigger litigation. Stock will drop. Board support will waver. Are you prepared for that?" She looked at Jack. He did not nod. He did not speak. He only met her eyes steady. "I am prepared," she said. "Call the district attorney. Call OSHA. Call the fire marshal who closed that file. I will open our archives. I will waive privilege where I can. If I lose my job over it, fine. I can live with a different title. I cannot live with a lie." Donovan took off his hat. He set it on the table with care, as if even that small act should be done right. "I will swear a statement," he said. Mara's phone lit up again. She glanced at the screen, then looked at Katherine. The night watchman's widow is on hold. She heard there were files. She is willing to come in. Katherine swallowed. Please ask her to come. She turned to Jack. Her voice dropped. I owe you something I cannot put in a box. You tried to tell us. We shut the door. Tonight I am opening it. She reached for the locket and set it between them. This belonged to my mother. You kept it safe when I did not even know how to look. I will carry it when I speak to the widow. But I want you to hold it until we tell the whole truth. Will you? Jack's throat worked. He cupped the small oval as if it were living. I will. Victor was already backing toward the door. You do this, and you will drag us all into a storm, he said. Katherine did not look up. Then we will learn how to stand in weather. Lily moved to Jack's side and slipped her hand into his. Rusty woke, stretched, and put his head on Jack's shoe. In the glass, the city lights flickered like a signal. The room smelled like paper and coffee, and cold air was carried in on coats. It smelled real. Katherine reached for the phone. This is Katherine Hayes, she said to the operator. Put me through to the district attorney. I am ready to make a statement. By morning, the city knew. Headlines stacked on doorsteps. Talk radio hummed with callers who spoke in plain voices about chained doors and quiet filings. The stock dipped before lunch. Cameras gathered in front of Hayes Meridian like crows on a wire. Katherine stood behind a simple podium. No backdrop, no logo wall. Just a microphone and a statement. She named what they had found. She did not dress it in careful language. She said the words that hurt. We cut corners. People died. We failed them. We will cooperate. We will repair what can be repaired. Then she stepped away and took questions until her voice ran low. That night the office dimmed early. The river moved like dark glass. Jack sat on a bench 2 blocks from the community center, Rusty's head on his knee. Lily joined him with 2 paper cups. Hot chocolate extra marshmallows. They watched the streetlights blink on one by one as if the city were remembering itself. She did it, Lily said. All the way. Jack nodded. Truth has a weight. She decided to carry it. Does it crush you, Lily asked, or make you stronger? Depends on whether you carry it alone, he said. Footsteps on the path. Katherine coat unbuttoned hair loosened by wind. She sat beside them without ceremony. No speeches, no plans. For a long time they said nothing. The quiet felt earned. Across the street, a man in a maintenance jacket propped open the center's door. Warm light spilled onto the sidewalk. Inside, volunteers stacked crates. A little boy tugged at his mother's sleeve and pointed at Rusty. The dog's tail thumped once-twice as if answering a private joke. Katherine reached into her pocket and set the locket in Jack's palm. It belongs with you until the last statement is signed, she said. After that, if you still want to give it back, I will take it. Jack closed his fingers over the oval. Maybe we let the truth decide where it lives, he said. Snow threatened, then changed its mind. The river kept moving. Somewhere a siren wailed, then faded. The world did not end. It simply asked the same old question in a new voice. When the storm breaks and the cost is real, what would you choose, protect the name you built or protect the people who trusted you? Do you forgive first or do you demand the bill in full?